Welcome to Conversations with Women Leaders, brought to you by DePauw University. Join us as we sit down with accomplished women leaders from various fields who share their personal experiences, challenges, and triumphs. Discover how these trailblazers have overcome barriers and shattered glass ceilings while making a positive impact on their communities and industries. Through these enlightening conversations, we explore the importance of a liberal arts education in shaping well-rounded, intellectually agile leaders.
Oh my gosh. So how are you?
I'm great.
How was your weekend?
The sun is out. It's blue sky.
Yes. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good.
What did you do?
I worked in the comfort of my own home. I have 3 screens set up now, so it's a good setup. Had a little quiet time on Saturday night with some friends. We watched the IU Iowa women's basketball game and got takeout Indian. So,
okay.
So that was nice. Little break.
All right.
But we're in the thick of it now.
30 days.
Yeah.
30 days. Okay. So I've got some little cards here.
I know.
I want you to look at them and I want you to pick the one that best represents you today. And then I want you to tell us why it represents you today.
Okay, are these emojis? What are we looking at here? Oh yeah, that's not me. Nope, that's not me. No. Oh, I gotta go with this one.
All smiles.
Oh, always. Yeah, not always. No, not always. But not this, for sure, not this. This one I like it as well because it implies, okay, I'm thinking, I'm inquisitive, what's going on. But I would definitely say I'm pretty jazzed. Like over the weekend you ask about. So there was a lot of media and press around the basketball court that was installed at the airport. And just seeing that and the energy and the vibe with that and how that just took over social media and people were so excited about it and the snarky comments about, gives whole new meaning to traveling, those sorts of things. Or, I'm taking my kids to Disney at 6, catching a flight, got to school them on the court at 4, those sorts of things. That really energizes us as we really get into the thick of this.
I was sharing with you earlier, I went out of town on Wednesday and they were just starting to put the floor down. And I've been around enough of the installers to know kind of what was happening, but not really know what the end result was. I got back on Saturday night after traveling delay after delay after delay. And then I walk into the main entry at Indy and the court's down. And it was pretty cool. And then it even got better. I didn't know it could get better. Going down into baggage claim. Who would have thought it got better going down there? But just the use of the space, the colors, the graphics, it was super exciting. To the point where I started counting. I'm like, how many days do we have to go? Like, how long is this going to be up, sort of thing? And recognizing that we were almost a full month out before it was going to happen. So
we're reminded all the time because we have these countdown clocks we can't see, but behind us there's a countdown clock. And I'm obsessed with numbers, so I may have been kind of the thought behind that, but now I just don't look at it. I just know we got to go. And the beauty of things like what you're talking about at the airport is if you come to Indy, you are going to know there is a major event in this city. And that's the beauty of our city, the people who come together to make this happen, the partnership with the airport. And we want you to know, if you go to a larger city, you might not even know that there's a major event happening. Here, you will know it, you will feel it, you will hear it, you will see it. You'll be in the thick of it, and you'll be able to enjoy it.
So what will the next 30 days look like for you?
The next 30 days are putting a plan in motion and seeing it activate. We've been working on this since 2017, technically, headed into what was then 2021. So for me, it's really exciting to see it all come to fruition. There are a lot of details, a lot of nuts and bolts. We're going to have unexpected things that come up, and we're going to pick up the phone and say, hey, can you help us figure this out? And we're going to get it figured out. And then the international spotlight turns onto our city for a solid 4 days.
So let's go back to 2017. They announced that Indianapolis is going to be the host for the 2021 NBA All-Star Game. You come on board around 2019. Mm-hmm. And then fall of 2020 hits and the world goes upside down. There's a decision to move the All-Star game for COVID reasons. At that time, too, I was doing some reading. Maybe there were some thoughts about the NCAA men's basketball potentially influencing some things. But that was you're running at a full sprint almost. And then you got to stop. And then you got to turn on a dime. What was that like for you in your role?
Well, when March hit, March of 2020, we were just getting back from having been in Chicago and observing All-Star there and taking all the notes. And I'm a visual learner. So for me, that was really important because that was my first All-Star to be looking at it from that regard. So coming back from All-Star and just starting to catch wind of, okay, what is this and what are they talking about? And starting to ramp up a little bit and understand that, and helping out on the communication side here at the organization, really getting into understanding what it might mean. And then we all know the middle of March, everything shut down. I mean, I was here literally for games that were happening at the college level when we had people in the entry pavilion and we said, we're not opening. We're not having a game today. So it's unlike any of us have been through. Yeah. The last pandemic was 100 years ago, so we didn't know what we were getting into. So as we prepared here at the office, they had everybody come through, IT, check computers, make sure you're good to go. We're going to work at home for a couple weeks, and then lo and behold, we all know what then next happened. So we had given away $1 million for All-Star for legacy grants, which we can talk for an hour about, that we're doing brick and mortar projects. Well, we wanted to see those. We'd already started to fund those. Those construction projects had already started to happen. So there was all of that. We had a board of directors. We had 400 people engaged on our host committee. We'd had our first meeting at the end of January where we tipped everything off and had these committees that were getting ready to engage and start working. And it was like, you pump the brakes. So by late summer, I think the writing was on the wall. This is probably not something that's short-lived. And so conversations with the NBA about All-Star, what that was going to look like. And then, as you said, in November, announcing that we were going to pause. And they did hold an All-Star in 21. It was in Atlanta. No fans. I think they let some family people come in. Mm-hmm. So we went to the back of the line. So they had already awarded 22 for Cleveland and 23 for Salt Lake City, and they had not awarded 24. So we're like, yep, we're in. Let's do 24 here at Indy, because we wanted to make sure that we could have fan engagement, do things like a basketball court at the airport, all of those cool things where our city gets engaged as well as the world gets engaged. So it was just a matter of being able to pivot, which is a part of any job, being able to adjust, being able to flex, being able to adapt, being able to change, being a change agent, leading those people. It was a lot, though. I mean, it was a lot to take in for sure.
So when I think about now where you're at in 2024, you've learned a lot from what you were probably starting for 2021. Pivot, change. What's been a significant pivot or change that you all made that maybe your thinking was taking you down one road for 2021, but by the time you got to now, you were like, nope, we're not doing that. We're gonna do something else instead.
So one is physical that I can identify, and the second one is really some of the directed that we have been working on. So the physical difference between had we hosted in 21 versus 2024 is this building. So in 2021, we were in the middle of a complete renovation for this building, and it was a 3-phase, 3-year renovation. We were only 1/3 of the way through that. So we would have had an all-star event in this building where some of the seats would have been black and some of them would have been green from the original way back when, Conseco, then Bankers Life, now Gainbridge Fieldhouse days. So, and some of the suites had been renovated, but not the upper level. So mid-construction, mid-renovation. Behind us, there would have been a parking garage. Now, fast forward 3 years later, physically, this building and the renovations are complete, and it is like a new experience for anyone who comes in here. I know when I saw you, when we were greeting you in the entry pavilion, just the comments about how different that even looks. And then where the parking garage is now Bicentennial Unity Plaza. That would not have existed. That gives us right now the opportunity for fan and customer engagement because there's an ice skating rink out there. Typically, there's a basketball court out there. So we see a lot of people just picking up hoops randomly out there enjoying the basketball court. So physically, a lot different. We have the opportunity then to program and activate what's on Bicentennial Unity Plaza during All-Star. So physical, that's one primary difference, what we have to offer to those coming to the building or outside the building. The other change I would say is that we had a host committee. Like I said, we had about 400 different people who were engaged on our host committee. And we had 20 or so different committees that were helping. And when you saw 2020 and you saw Black Lives Matter and you saw the George Floyd impact on the world, we in Indianapolis obviously took notice of that. And one of the main changes that we activated was we added an arts and culture committee. We didn't have that in 21. And our arts and culture committee has been integral in all of the programming that we're doing. And come February 16th through the 18th, when you come downtown, you will feel that experience in ways that would never have been imagined had we hosted in 21.
That's amazing. Did you think you were going to be here when you left DePauw back in the late 80s?
Oh, I had no idea where I was going to be. I didn't have a vision. One of the things that from my before DePauw days is I've never been an athlete, right? Never been an athlete. My brother was the athlete. I was a wannabe athlete. I'm very average at every sport I try, or less than average, but I enjoy them. And I'm not competitive in that regard. I just like doing them. Like to play games, board games, euchre, card games, whatever the case might be. But where I found my skill to be was on the sidelines, literally as a cheerleader, but also as an event organizer helping. So at DePauw, I was on union board, as an example, and was able to help do a lot of that. I was on the Little 500 steering committee several years. So never going to be on the bike. Rode the bike yesterday morning in my basement, but not at any fast speeds, but was able to help with planning the event. So found my niche in that regard. Also found through a winter term, actually, that I really enjoyed doing that with sports. My first touch into the sporting world in an official capacity was my junior or senior year. I did a winter term for the Pan Am Games that were hosted here in 1987. So, and really I got bit by the bug at that point. So I've been a long-time volunteer in sporting events going back to that winter term opportunity. So didn't know where it was going to take me, but I know that I've been able to have some cool volunteer opportunities and then also some cool professional opportunities that have intersected sports with my communication and management and event background.
What was your coolest volunteer opportunity?
Well, I probably would say it wasn't a volunteer opportunity, but the winter term, because I remember exactly where I was, and the building has been torn down. The building where we ran the Pan Am offices out of has been torn down. But I remember being in the room. I was in the Event Operations Center, and I remember turning around because Mark Miles and Sandy Knapp, who are names that if you don't know who they are, if you're interested in the history of Indianapolis and the significance of sporting events and the impact that they personally have had on that here in our city and our state, you should investigate them. Turning around, they walked in the room. And I still remember, I could tell you exactly where I was sitting if the building still existed. I'm like, oh, I'm in the room with Mark Miles and Sandy Knapp, those sorts of things. Not starstruck by the athletes and things like that, but more just the behind the scenes and the people who really make it happen.
That's amazing because you don't often know the folks behind the scenes, right? Because they're not widely publicized. They're not on camera. People aren't taking photos of them, but you knew who they were. How did you know who they were?
That's a great question. I probably just because of being tuned into the event and the organization and the people that I was working with in my position, and just historically knowing I'm a news junkie, and so seeing their name in the headlines and seeing the impact that they had made in other facets of their professional careers, just knew enough to know, all right, they're people who, I can't probably say it, but get shit done, right?
Right.
Those kind of people.
Right. So it's been more than 30 years since you've left DePauw, right?
Yeah.
You've gone through healthcare, politics, sport, non-sport, nonprofits. What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way that you still utilize today?
So, interestingly enough, it was never a direct goal of mine that I really didn't recognize until probably 10 years ago, that my path had been in nonprofit, civic, those sorts of things. I hadn't worked in a company that was traded on Wall Street or publicly traded in that regard, profit-driven in the true sense of it. So definitely have learned that that's where, again, it wasn't a conscious decision, but that obviously that helps fill my cup, that I like that opportunity, whether it's community-based or civic-based. So obviously that's important to me. And I also there was one job when we lived in Nevada that I worked, it was the gas utility company, and it was publicly traded. I worked in the HR side of things. But even if the job doesn't allow that, I've always been very deliberate about finding other places where I can fill my cup. So if the job is just a job, which is okay, then I want to make sure I find other places to fill my cup. And I encourage people that I talk to that are, reach out and just want to chat or talk a little bit about my background and to find that opportunity. So whether that's your kid's PTO or your church, or for me, it was volunteering at World Cycling or the NCAA events or the Big Ten championships that happened here, find that opportunity as well. So lots of lessons to be learned. We could spend the next 2 hours talking about many things, but.
Okay. What's your ideal day when you're super productive?
That is actually a similar question that I ask when I'm interviewing people, is that if you had a day and you had a planner and you had 10 things on your planner for the day and you come in, do you prefer a day that at the end of the day you've checked all 10 off and you go home and there you go? Or do you prefer a day where you had 10 things on your planner and you go home and you had 2 things checked off? And your answer to that, usually in the roles that I'm looking to fill, is what I'm looking for is the latter, because you got to be able to adapt and curveballs. God made people to be very different, for sure. And thankfully, there are people who are willing to do jobs that are on a factory line or things like that. That is not me. I need energy. I need difference. I need curveballs coming at me. I need to be reacting. I need to be engaging other people to help and figure out problems. I need days that are just full of variety. Right now, my days are a lot of meetings. Every meeting is different, so I have to pivot. I have to turn off, okay, now we're not in that mode, we're in this mode, those sorts of things. So I really enjoy that variety as well. I really enjoy being with people. So even during the height of the pandemic, when our building was hosting events, unlike buildings in many cities and states and countries, I did say I'd be willing to come in and help just because I needed a little bit of that interaction. We were doing it very safe. I felt very safe. I didn't want to do anything to cause harm to my family. And we were doing it right here. So I'm like, yep, I'm happy to come in. So literally working at the media check-in table here when we were hosting events because I was happy to be here. And I don't know whether the term is extroverted introvert or introverted extrovert. I definitely enjoy that quiet time at home too. So really treasure that, the opportunities where there's quiet as well.
So you brought up a little bit of, if you're interviewing somebody, you're going to ask a question just like I did. Well, I think another interview question is, tell me your leadership style, your management style. What would I expect of you as a supervisor?
So we did the DISC assessment here a year or 2 ago.
I'm a DISC believer, 15 years.
Okay, so what are you?
Let's finish the interview and I'll come back and I'll see if you can tell me what you think I am.
I have a feeling we're similar. I'm a D, lean heavily I. So D is like dominant and I is influencer. So I would say it's pretty spot on when you read the description as to what that means, like being willing to take risks and wanting to engage. And I actually pulled it out last night because I wanted to read it again. And I brought it with me because there are some really spot on quotes that it has in terms of how it describes a leader. I like to get stuff done. I like to see things accomplished. But I think I have a people skill that I'm not sure my daughters would agree with it.
Okay. Why is that?
Because I'm tough. I mean, I think I'm tough in that regard, that I'm also a perfectionist, which is hard. And that's something that as I've aged, I've been better at understanding that my checkbook, going back to the previous conversation, doesn't have to balance to a penny, but I do like it to balance to a penny. So, and I'm a heavy red pen because I want things to be perfect. But you got to be able to see the forest, right? And not just focus on the trees. And so that has been something that as I've aged, I've definitely learned.
So how do you communicate that to others? Because I think that can be seen as very sharp to some others. It can be seen almost aggressive, right? I think sometimes a woman being identified with the term dominant doesn't necessarily blend itself. So how does that translate then into a good working environment for the people that you're around when all they're seeing is red pen all over the place? And every time they say, hey, how was that? You're like, that was great, but
right
type of thing. Like, how do you then translate that into getting the most out of the people that you're working with?
Well, the most important thing is you got to continue to celebrate the wins. You've got to celebrate them. And just like I would say for me, for them, it's important to recognize who they are. And I would say that about me. This is me. Like that. So one of my other regular interview questions is, I want to know your walkout song. Like, what is your walkout song? My walkout song is This Is Me. And occasionally I'll just throw it on Spotify as I'm driving in or whatever, because it's a hype song. It just gets me motivated. But this is me. I'm battered. I am bruised. I am not perfect. And I'm sorry, but I'm doing the best I can. But I got to recognize that about you as well. So I think that's very important, and that we're all going to make mistakes along the way, and we figure that out and we move on from there. So I think that is an important element of how you continue to motivate people, recognizing who they are, recognizing where they are at this moment in time, but also celebrating them. And when they have things to celebrate and successes, that we all take a moment to recognize that.
My walkout song is This Girl Is on Fire.
Oh, see, good.
By Alicia Keys.
See, now I'm going to have a song headache right there. I got it. So.
I know. You can listen to that one too.
Yep.
Just to see how it goes. I'll listen to This Is Me on the drive home today. Do you have mentors in this business?
Absolutely. And then I think an important piece of that on the flip side is that we find an opportunity to pay that forward too. So if somebody hits me up on LinkedIn and says, hey, do you have 30 minutes? Especially now, it's so easy. 30 minutes virtual. Everybody knows how to do that. So pay it forward. You got to pay it forward. So people have poured into me. I want to continue to pour into others as well. Whether it makes an impact or not, I'm more than happy to do that sort of thing. So you want me to name names? I'm happy to name a couple names.
I would either appreciate names or maybe what you've learned from them.
So I would say Allison Melanchthon, for sure. She currently is one of the lead people at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Penske with that team out there. I was able to work with her as a volunteer when she was at Indiana Sports Corporation. First ran across her back in the late 90s. Again, volunteering at Big Ten basketball tournaments that were out at Hinkle. Observing her passion and compassion and her caring nature was really impactful to me. Again, maybe not the D and the I that we talk about in terms of the DISC assessment, but the way that she is able to bring people along. She was then my boss when I worked at the Super Bowl. And it's not for everybody, but when we were really in the middle of all of the intense planning and the last 2 weeks, we had early 6 a.m. meetings where we were all together, and there were days that ended in a group hug, right? So just being able to literally embrace it like that, and her ability to bring people along, I thought was always very, very impactful. Another name I would say is Bill Benner. He has been a mentor. My background when I was at DePauw, I have my degree in communications. So just his community and connectivity and the impact that he's had in the sporting world and just his mentorship and leadership has been critical, I think, for me personally.
You've had a hand in 30 years of major sport activity in Indianapolis, starting with the Pan Am Games with your winter term, working through a series of NCAA Final Fours, Super Bowl, NBA All-Star Game. As I'm reading about all of these things, I caught a snippet of you talking about scarves. And then I know when you came to class in 2019, you were handing out baggies of yarn, I think, for hats. Can you share what's the deal with scarves and hats and how that came about?
Sure. Scarves and beanies, nothing but knit, we call it, right? Not nothing but net, but nothing but knit. That is how Indy does events. So we don't just turn over the keys and say, here you go, NFL or NBA. Have a great event. Enjoy the building. We want to make it so much more than a game or more than an event. And so how do you do that? You got to engage the community. And so that's, again, where I have found my interest, whether it was out as a volunteer or whether it's as an employee working on the actual event. And that is, to me, the coolest thing, because whether you have an opportunity to have a butt in the seat for whatever that main event is, you can say, I was a part of it. I somehow was a part of the Super Bowl, or I was somehow a part of NBA All-Star. And the beanies and the scarves are a perfect example of that because, and I can cite a couple different groups. So the scarves, we needed 8,000 because we were going to have 8,000 volunteers. We ended up with more than 12,000 of those. Why? Because word got out and people just literally from all over the world were creating these scarves and sending them to us. So we had 12,000 of those. We then were able to give those out to volunteers, but then we were able to give them to the media and to the players and all the different people who were here. Just, again, as a literal sense of, we want you to be warm and we want you to feel that warmth here when you're in Indianapolis. So we're going to wrap you in a scarf to make you feel warm. So the beanies are, again, just another iteration of that, where we wanted to be able to say, here's a nice touch. Welcome to Indy. We want you to feel that warmth. We're happy to have you here. So the example that I said in terms of people who are participating, so back with the scarves in 2012, and then again right now, there's an official patch that gets sewn on them that is the logo. And the residents at the Indiana Women's Prison sewed all of those on by hand, both for the scarves, and we just this week picked up our last batch of beanies from the Indiana Women's Facility, and the residents there have, again, taken those patches and put them on there for us. So whether they have an opportunity or not to say they were here, they can say they helped with the All-Star experience.
That's awesome. Also very crafty. Mm-hmm. Are you crafty otherwise?
I love crafty.
Ooh,
I do.
Tell me your favorite
crafty.
craft.
Well, I have a whole cabinet of jewels. I had a whole phase where I was making necklaces and bracelets and earrings and all of that. So that phase has passed, but I do still have all of that. But everything, when I was younger, I was old before my time. I liked cross stitch, that sort of thing. I really enjoy baking. So my grandma was a baker, and I definitely have inherited that and like to spend a lot. I know that's not necessarily craft, but I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. You ask about this weekend. One of my, I try to, because I know work might be 12 hours at the computer, I try to keep myself motivated. So this weekend I stepped away and I made brown butter chocolate chip cookies. That's a little treat to myself.
I think we could be buddies because I love to bake too. That is the way that I am able to sort of put everything else aside. I have to focus on a recipe. I know if I'm not focused, if I put things in the wrong order and everything else. Is that brown butter chocolate chip cookie your favorite recipe?
It is currently, for sure. We have a little uni pizza oven. And so I like the challenge of making the dough from scratch, and that's a 48-hour process, and seeing it come to fruition, and then putting all of it out on the island and everybody creating their own pizza, and then the 90 seconds of getting it right and spinning it in the oven, there's a challenge there too. So that's also a favorite right now.
I am not that patient. I'd rather mix and put in the oven and kind of go on. But I start to get in this loop, and the next thing you know, I have way too many baked items in the kitchen for what we really need to consume.
No, that was my break over the holidays. Is I typically do cookie trays for a dozen or so of our closest family friend groups. And they're like, oh, you're not doing them this year, are you? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm doing them, because that's the opportunity for me to step away. So I make homemade toffee. There are about 12 different items on the tray. And so starting at the beginning of November, I start making things, throw them in the freezer. And then there's a whole production day where all the trays come together and Santa and the helpers go out and deliver. And so that happened.
That's awesome. At Pacers Sport and Entertainment, is there somebody here that you really admire, that you've learned a lot from, or you want to learn more from?
I would say, I don't know that I would single out a person for that question. I would say that it's really interesting to see, because it's a family-run business. So really starting at the top with Herb Simon, his son Steve Simon, and how they lead and how they are dedicated to this community. And you could rewind that back to the late 70s when Slick went out in the community and they had a telethon to be able to save the Pacers and stay in our community. So, and that was before the Simons even owned it. So the community-based aspect of that, I've always respected from the outside, whether I was working with them on projects because of where I worked in the mayor's office, and now from the inside, I would say it's that attitude that has always really inspired me, and was one of the reasons that I raised my hand and said, hey, specifically to Mel Raines, when I knew they were bidding on this event, I was able to say, whether it's as an employee or as a volunteer, I want to help you with this event because it's going to be cool. And that's under the leadership and the guidance of not just Herb and Steve Simon, but also Rick Fusen here and Mel and the others. So I love that community passion, the foundation that we have and how we give back, and whether it's renovating or creating new basketball courts, or just recently in this building, a diaper drive because of Martin Luther King Day, just all of those touches around the Thanksgiving holiday. Come to our house where we feed hundreds of different people and are able to provide a nice, warm experience for them around the Thanksgiving holiday. Obviously, the community aspect of all of that is what has really inspired me from this organization.
Can you tell us about a day when you were just spot on? Everything was going right and you were just on top of the world?
No, not one day. I mean, I think there are moments in time, but I think, so my husband and I, and now our daughters, we are very much about like hiking and outdoors. And so a lot of the things that I say, and I'm never good about getting sayings exactly right, but are around hiking. So one of the things that I talk about, and it's that you climb to the top, not to be seen, but to see what you can see, sort of thing, right? Or the fact that without the valleys, the peaks would have no view. So you've got to be in the thick of it and know that those valleys are helping you learn. That's where the fruit is made, right? The fruit grows in the valleys. You learn when you're in those valleys, and then you're able to enjoy the peaks and the views even more. So I don't know that there's one day where it's just been incredible, because there's always that, hey, it's, reality. It's not perfect, poking there, and that's all right. That's part of it.
So I want to thank you for answering my email when I first messaged you to say that you are the inaugural guest of the Sanger Leadership Institute, sponsored by our School of Business and Leadership. You are our first guest on our conversation with women leaders. You're getting a little teary-eyed here. I can see. So I want to thank you for doing that and just setting such a great example, and just being such a great partner over the years to me, and always answering the call kind of thing whenever we need you for our students or whatever. Is there anything else before I ask you some rapid fire questions here at the end? Is there anything else that you might want to share or record for others?
I guess going back, not necessarily to the question about leadership or anything, but I think an important piece of it, and the question you just asked, is like, has there ever been a day that's just spot on? I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that it's not perfect. I mean, I am a perfectionist, but I am who I am. This is me as the walkout song, those sorts of things. And it's okay to fail. And I think that's a hard thing for people to get comfortable with, but I think that's an important element of it. It isn't all about the successes, and life is not all about the successes, and that you can take those and learn from them. And I'm a lifelong learner. I guess that's the last thing that I would say, is that I really like to stop and take in new things every day, whether it's meeting somebody new or it's learning how to like how you program this morning. I had to learn how to get these on. So I didn't know how to do that. And he wasn't here. And so I conquered it. I'm like, all right, so learning something new, lifelong learner, I think is the last note that I would say. I treasure that.
Excellent. All right, what was your favorite class at DePauw?
Favorite class at DePauw was Dave Congleton, and he taught mass media. Really enjoyed that. I also wasn't a class, but I got to work in the PR office and really had a great experience there with that staff. And I think it shaped me and where I ended up ultimately starting my career.
Okay. Would Dave be your favorite professor, or did you have others on campus that you liked?
Well, Ted, of course, because of Union Board. So
Ted Catula.
Yes,
Yep.
Ted Catula, for sure. And I would say Marnie was important. I worked at IBM when I was there, so I had some good people who were helping me from IBM as well in the community. I would say that Dr. Weiss, who led the communications, I don't know what his title was, but He was important. He's long since retired. And so lots of different people had an impact.
If you had to pick Marvin's, Mama Nun's, Double Decker, where were you? Where would we find you eating?
Going against the grain here, I much prefer, I'm sorry, Marvin, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I much prefer Mama Nun's garlic cheeseburger.
Oh, okay.
I know, create a lot of ripples there.
Well, there's a number of folks who are probably listening and watching that don't even know who or what Mama Nun's is in town.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that's a good one. Do you have a favorite restaurant here in Indianapolis or in the surrounding area?
I'm a big pizza person, so King Dough, love King Dough. We will travel far and wide for a good pizza. My husband and I actually last year literally went to New York just to get pizza. Because...
Okay, share a little bit more on that one. How did that happen?
So
how does one just simply say, I'm going to go to New York to pick up a pizza?
Yeah, so there's this really good place in Italy that we like, and they opened a restaurant in New York where they're serving the same pizza, and we had to have it. And there's also a really good sandwich place that's in a few places in Rome and Florence, and they were opening a sandwich shop also in New York around the same time, so we went to get the sandwiches and the pizza. We took a long weekend and got sandwiches and pizza in New York. So King Dough, Napoli's, there are some really good pizzas. Futuro here in Indy. We could spend a full hour talking about my pizza reviews. But it's all about the pizza oven. It's got to be that rapid fire cook. That.
All right, we're at the end here now. What's my disc style?
What is your disc style? I don't know that you're definitely an influencer. I think you're definitely an I. But I think you probably bring some of the S in as well. I don't know. Answer. What is it?
On the sheet of paper, it'll tell you I'm a CD or a DC.
Okay.
Depending on what I am. So dominant, conscientious, right? So I like organization. I like to be decisive in my thinking and decision making for things, but I don't like to do it without a bunch of data. So I tend to do a lot of reading ahead of time. So that way in the moment I can make the best decisions that I can for things. I have a really funny shade into that influencer space, into that I am the introverted extrovert, as you were talking about earlier, in terms of I can be on, but then when I'm off, I really need to be off and away from folks because I really need that time to regenerate. So I balance it. I try to meet people where they are and what they need in those spaces. And I can be the quiet person sitting off to the side and be just fine looking at everything or reading a book or I need to be in the middle of it, I can be in the middle of it too. Kind of thing. So thank you so much for taking time to chat with us this morning. We've had a live audience, so if you guys can give Dianna a round of applause.
So thanks for having us today. I know you're pretty busy right now with everything going on. Like Stevie said, like 30 more days until the All-Star game. So thank you again for having us and sitting down and talking to us. You kind of touched on this, how you got into your work in the industry, but what were some of the challenges that you might have faced along the way? And then also being the only girl in this class, like what kind of challenges as a woman did you face also with it being a predominantly male field?
I would say probably the main challenge was me just knowing, first of all, when I look at my parents, they each had basically one job most of their career. And that has not been the case for me. I think this is probably my 8th role. And just a challenge was being comfortable in the fact that I wasn't going to be one place. And that goes back to me and my personality and the fact that I'm always looking for that new challenge and that new opportunity. So just being tuned in on the fact of knowing myself and knowing where I wanted to go, I think was probably pretty important. When you talk about the challenges of a woman, and this goes back to the DISC assessment and the dominant piece of all of that, I have not probably, and some people probably wouldn't like this answer, I don't really look at it like that. I just look at it as this is me and this is what I'm doing, and whether you're male or female, we're in a room and we're here to accomplish something and let's get it done. Now, I know there are differences, and way back when it's, women are from Venus, men are from Mars, all of that. I get that. There are differences in how people operate. But even as a person, whether you're male or female, there are differences in how we lead or how we work with people or how we like to interact with people. And so I'm just more about let's figure out what we're working on and let's get it done.
What would you say your favorite part of your job is that you're doing right now?
My favorite part of my job, without a doubt, is the fact that it makes a difference in the community. I like that there's community impact. I like that we have hundreds of people who are helping us accomplish that. We have all of the Pacer Sports and Entertainment employees, plus we have 350 other people on this committee who are helping us to achieve this. We have 52 people on our board. This is not a one-person show that's coming into town. This is not just the NBA with All-Star. It is a collective effort of a community, and I thrive on that ability to engage the community, but also to impact and give back to the community.
So since the All-Star game, again, right around the corner, what will your role look like once it's over? Like, you've done all this time preparing for it, but what do you think you'll step into next?
That is a great question, because that's the great unknown, big old question mark, because I don't know what's next. And this is the second time in my career where I've taken a job where there was a hard stop. When it's over, and you move on. And I know not a lot of people would be willing to take that risk, and I'm okay with that. I'm a faith-driven person, and I know that it's going to work out. So if it's such that I don't have another job and there are 3 or 4 or 5 months where I don't have another job, there's a reason for that. I need to be home. I need to be focused on something else, whatever it is. And I might not know until I look back 2 years from now and say, okay, that's why this all worked out this way, right? But because I know God has a plan for me and I know that that'll work out. So whatever's next, I don't know what's next. I'm also not taking time to worry about that. I have people on my team who I want to make sure that they are placed and we find homes for them. And so we'll be focused on that. But for me, there'll be a lot of wrap up. So we see the last visitor head out from the airport the middle of February. That week in February, we're going to come back. We'll have after action reporting to do. We're going to do economic impact studies. There'll be a lot of work that we still will have a lot of bills to pay. Get all that wrapped up, tidy with a bow, and then start to work on building out the resume and figuring out what's next. But I don't know what's next. I know for a fact it's something. Like, people are saying, oh, so you're going to retire? No, I'm nowhere. I mean, I have friends who are younger than me who are retiring or have retired. And yes, I love what they're doing, and I love that they have flexibility in their travel and their time. I'm personally just not ready for that yet. I am looking forward to the balance where I bring some of that back into my schedule. There is a lot of work happening right now, but I'm not ready to not work. I got one more good job in me.
So as big of a event as this is, where do you kind of start with everything? Like, you have so many different things you have to tackle. Where do you start? How many kind of like committees are you reporting to? That sort of thing.
It takes money and people and a collective effort to make this happen. So you got to have a budget. So the money was raised through the foresight of a couple groups who, what is called the Indy Championships Fund, who put money on the table through raising money in our community with corporate and personal donations. So we had money. We obviously received the bid from the NBA, so we had some knowledge as to what we have to do from a contractual basis rather than just handing over the keys and saying, have a great event. We had these other additional things that we wanted to bring to the table. So we formed a host committee. We have 24, number coincidental, maybe not, 24 different committees who are working on everything from inclusive accessibility access to the All-Star experience and what's happening in our downtown for the people who maybe don't get tickets to the game, to the operations people, to XBE and how we engage our minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. We have 24 different committees who are all working on different aspects of that, and then bringing them together to work coordinated in their efforts has been an important piece of that. So that host committee is a driver in this, and then we have a board. So we are a nonprofit that was formed strictly to accomplish what was then 2021 NBA All-Star that is now fast forwarded to 2024. And that board has been our guiding light. And we want to be the most inclusive, investive, and innovative All-Star that the NBA has had.
I know we've talked about kind of the DISC assessment and the dominance and the influencer kind of piece, but what other skills and qualities do you think you bring to the table that have helped you be so successful in the roles that you've had?
Adapt, being able to be flexible, so I don't know that it's a positive, but I do like control. So some people might say control freak, but I think there's a positive side of that too. So the ability to see the forest for the trees, to be able to see the picture, the big picture, but then get all the pieces together. So like a puzzle, each piece is an important piece of the overall picture. So putting those puzzle pieces together and being able to paint this bigger picture, which ultimately is going to hopefully have this great impact on our community, on the NBA, on the sport of basketball, but also on the culture and the just continuing to elevate Indianapolis in terms of the international spotlight.
Cool. When you're hiring someone, what is probably the biggest thing you're looking for?
This is going to surprise people. One of the main questions I ask, now most of my roles have been in PR and media and communication, but still one of the most important questions I ask in every interview is, on a scale of 1 to 10, rank your writing skills. Why? And so I don't know if it's still a thing at DePauw, but we had to have a Q, a W. Okay, yep, so that's still a thing. All right. So I think that is really important. And writing is less prominent today than it was when I was in school because of what is on your knee, right? The phone, the ability to be social, the ability of all of that. But if someone can write, to me, that's very important because I know then they can collect their thoughts, they can be efficient in how they're communicating, and it just is it's a telling number for me, that 1 to 10 where they put themselves. And if they say 10, I'm not buying it, because we all have opportunity for improvement.
I know you worked for Foot Locker and you also did the Super Bowl when it was in Indy. What kind of similar things are you doing now? And also what kind of differences are there in your role right now?
So I was able to work at Finish Line's corporate office. No, you're good. There's always that. Everybody always confuses the two, but the corporate office for Finish Line was here in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. That is one of 2 times in my life where I've worked on the for-profit side of things, really, and a publicly traded company, which was a great opportunity because I learned all about Wall Street and what it takes and what you can and can't do from a communications perspective. So great opportunity for me there. When you look back at the Super Bowl and the opportunities to work at a couple of those companies, I've been able to again, when you look at the interview questions at Finish Line, one of the things that people would always chuckle about a little bit behind the scenes is you'd have a candidate come in and say, I want to work here because I'm a great athlete and I love to run. That's awesome. You're going to get a great discount on the shoes, but that really doesn't do anything for us as an organization. We need people who can run the IT system. We need people who can run the accounting system. We need people who can manage our our supplier, how we fulfill all of that back in the back. We need people who can hire people. If you're a runner, that's something to do at lunch, but we're not going to need that on the job probably. So when you look at things like the Super Bowl or All-Star, the love of basketball or the love of football plays into it, but for what it takes to actually put those events on. And that's what I think is really interesting when you bring somebody into an organization like this and you give them the opportunity to rotate through the departments. There is a huge awakening as to, oh, wow, it's not just about how well I can, drive to the bucket or can I shoot a three. Obviously, I have no ability to do either of those, but the success of off the court really makes an impact for on the court and in the community.
What would you say is your biggest piece of advice as young students wanting to get their foot in the door and pursue a career in the sports industry?
LinkedIn. To extrapolate on that, it's all about the internship opportunities. It's all about the connections that you make. Every internship is critical. Take an internship, and if at the end of it you did not like it at all, that is 100% a win because you now know that is not a path for you. You don't want to go that way. You don't want to work in that area, or you don't want to work with somebody who supervises like that. Whatever it is, whatever caused you not to enjoy that experience is an incredibly important learning opportunity for you. So find those internships, find those connections, take those leaps, take those risks, take advantage of those, unpaid, paid, whatever it is, because that's going to help you work your way to where you're supposed to be.
Cool. I think that's all the questions that I have.
Well, that was quick and very painless. Does anyone else help?
Thank you for joining us on Conversations with Women Leaders, brought to you by the Sanger Leadership Initiative at DePauw University's School of Business and Leadership. For more information about DePauw, visit depauw.edu.